Okay, so we've already touched on this subject a little bit over in the shed, and people keep alluding to it. We're really looking at digging deeper into the cow and total feed story. So I'm just going to hand over to the dream team up here, and I will just chime in if anything's missed on the notes.
Cool, thanks, Mark. And I suppose like we've heard a lot today about sort of the people side of it, about the pasture management, and what I really want to touch on now, which I'm sure Anna agrees with me on this, is the cow, because it is the most important part of the system, but also about how it all comes together: the cow, the people, the pasture, and we've sort of talked a bit about the supplementary feed. So that's what we're going to try and do in this next section. And really interesting, as someone sort of said to me the other day, it's the cow is the most important part of the system, but if you look after your pastures, you look after your cow, and I think that's a really nice way of sort of pulling it all together. So Alicia touched on it in the shed before about the great repro results that are that are occurring on this farm. There's not too many people that get a 6-week in calf rate of 84%. It's just up. You guys might want to come over this way. So we're just up here, and it's in your notes, I think, page sort of 32 to 37, if you want to have a flick through there. But 24, 25. 84% 6-week in calf rate, 85% 3-week submission rate, and a 10% not in calf rate. So, I mean, Anna, you're the cow person here, aren't you? That's yeah. So just sort of wondering if you want to touch on some of the key aspects in the system that Anna and Hugh are both really humble, but holy smokes, they are doing a great job when you look at the numbers here. So just sort of touch on some of the key aspects in your system that you pay attention to in order to get those great results.
So basically it really starts from Christmas onwards, just looking after the animal, feeding right, condition scoring, culling, what we don't want to breed, non-cyclers and all that. Mating time, calving time, I'm out there probably every 3 hours checking the cows, writing down notes, anything that's had trouble calving. We're pretty much on animal health as soon as possible to keep them in the best nick so they can get into cycling again. We do tail painting, but that is when they come in from calving. So we have every 2 weeks we change colour, and then we later on can do that for metro checking, also to see who has been cycling. So if we've calved in the first week and it still hasn't cycled, we can work out why and get onto it earlier. We use teaser balls for for AB. Scratchies 24 hours before we start mating. Basically, we do 4 weeks of AOA up here and 3 weeks down at the Frisian herd. We seem to always get the right amount of placements, so that's why we've always had it short. And also we would like previously in that next cycle we've always had a small amount, so why keep going that when we might miss some. So I'd rather chuck the bulls in, get it more compacted, and yeah.
Yeah, and I think, we all know with reproduction, they talk about the reproduction cake and, the 8 ingredients that go into it, and we'd have to admit that Anna and Hugh have got a pretty good-looking cake up here. You guys sort of talked to me a little bit about body condition score. So, you said, I don't know if you just want to sort of talk through that you monitor it over the season and you'll, dry off lighter cows early and check them while they're dry as well.
Yeah, every day we're looking at them pretty much. That's a good thing about us being relief milkers as well. We can keep an eye on things. Just driving down the road and seeing them walking to their paddock. It's pretty, yeah, I can always tell Hugh you need up the feed. We'll do something about this. But I think that's, it's drained off. Anything that's not doing or light, dry them off early, obviously, and young cows.
Cool, and we did, I know sort of in the shed touched a little bit as sort of what happened in that 22-23 year, because actually previous to that the repro results had been really high as well. And I don't know if you just want to sort of touch on that sex semen as well. Not saying it's bad, but it just, that year it didn't work so well for you guys.
No, so we thought we'd give it a go because we'll do it in the first 2 weeks, get most of our replacements in because we like getting them in the July, early August. Didn't really exactly work out. I had one guy told me that I was loading too many up, and I was like, no, that's pretty much both sheds were half and half. So, there was 32 hold to 6 semen, and 64 for the last 2 weeks, which was normal semen. So.
And I know with with sex semen there is often less semen in each straw, and also in order to be able to sex it and choose the DNA that it's already been manipulated, so it can be more sensitive to handling. So transport, storage, and handling, it can be more sensitive. We don't know what happened. Some work out of Ireland just recently where they inseminated sort of 1,500 cows over about 400 farms, and they found that the sex semen had about an 85% so the conception rate was 85% of what the conventional semen was. So some people use it and have no problems. For these guys, it didn't work, and I think it sort of showed also the importance of recording, measuring, knowing what you'd used. If you sort of hadn't paid attention to it, you would have had a low conception rate that year and not been able to work out why. So
that's right. And the extra cost of it, we tried it. This is on. We tried it, but and we had the result, but then we really thought of why actually using it. We're getting enough replacements as it sort of is anyway, so we've kind of shied away from it since. But
And we do rear up Jersey bulls too, so it's not, and we get rid of 4-year-old Frisian bulls. So we're still in that market for the bobbies and the beefs. So that's why it's not the end of the world.
Yeah. Cool. Oh.
Just tell them that you're the tech.
I had been the tech for last. Hugh took over this year due to injury, which he loved every minute, eh?
We'll see what the results are.
On that Irish one, I understand that was the sex semen was used on only the best of the cows that could get pregnant, not and the comparison was across the rest of them.
Yeah, it's a really good point. So, and what they've sort of seen the trouble with comparing the sex semen with the conventional is the sex semen is often used on those, those early animals, so there is more chance of them getting back in calf. Yep. And I just want to we'll just carry on a little bit on the repro and the cow thing, but animal health obviously is a big influence on reproductive performance, and something that you pay a lot of attention to. And I think were you saying sort of a year or two ago you sort of had some issues with mastitis, so just wonder if you just sort of want to touch on, I suppose it just shows that it doesn't matter how well you run a system, you're going to have challenges, things will happen, but it's, I suppose identifying that and then working through it. So Anna or Hugh, just want to touch on sort of what happened with the mastitis.
It was pretty wet spring, right through I think. We got hit quite hard, especially with our heifers. So from then onwards, anything that had multiple cases that didn't heal quickly or anything like that, we pretty much put them on the truck. Quarters that didn't come right, we usually just free tip them and then get rid of them at the end. We don't really like putting too much in a cow if it's not going to give us back, so why have it here? Around dry off time, I went pretty hard on the whole dry cow, working out who had mastitis, high cell count, and everything like that, what dry cow they got to hopefully improve their cell count in the future.
Anything to add, Hugh? No?
No, not
Leave
really.
it to Anna to sort out?
Yeah, pretty much.
Cool. So just also want to touch a little bit, and I mean, Anna, you're really passionate about this, and it came out before, is the genetics and the breeding. So, just if you want to sort of touch on what do you consider when you're selecting the bulls, if you do, and what type of animal do you want on this farm? I mean, it's not a flat matter farm. So, what are you looking for in a cow?
So basically we want a 150 live weight cow, both
450.
Oh, 450, sorry. Sorry. We like a big Jersey and a smaller Friesian. Just want a nice, solid cow, no fine bone, good capacity, good udder, milk production.
What everyone wants.
Sorry?
What everyone wants. Yep.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yep.
Yeah,
Straight breeds.
sticking to the straight breeds for the whole bobbies and breeding and bulls. Yeah.
You saying straight breeds as in Frisian on Frisian?
Yep, Frisian on Frisian, Jersey on Jersey. We've got a couple crosses there. I look them up to see which way they go. If they go more Frisian, I'll put more Frisian over them, Jersey. So probably in 10 years' time, hopefully that will be a nice brown herd. Got a couple of Hughes cows in there.
Holding their own.
And I think it's really important to, when you think about the right cow for the system. So, I sort of look back, probably 20 years ago now, where in New Zealand we started to bring in a lot of semen. We started to breed animals for milk production because, we want to make more milk. And what we saw is those animals were not suited to our system. So they didn't graze well, they didn't walk well, and they did not get back in calf. So when you're looking at, the breeding worth, it's got different traits in it. There's 10 traits in there. And, things like, I know Anna looks at reproduction because that's so important, and we can see that it's working well for these guys. That smaller life weight, and that means that they've got animals that can walk. These hills can graze well, a smaller sort of footprint, so to speak. So finding that right cow for the right system is really important. So really, I suppose we've talked a bit about the cow. What I really want to get in now is, how do we make this whole system work? So we've got a good cow. Hugh's got really good pasture management, and I'm just going to touch a little bit on, sort of on the use of supplements in the system. It's come up a few times. Two sort of ways, I suppose, is that. We use supplements profitably in the system. And also, I want to point out as well, when we look at this graph just here, and if you want to, it's in your booklet as well. But and this shows us the relationship between pasture and crop harvested along the bottom here, and operating profit up the side. And you can see where Hugh and Anna sit as this star here, and a really, really, close relationship. And actually last year, if we look at the numbers up there, what that's telling us is that for every extra tonne of dry matter, of pastoral crop eaten on the farm, it was worth another $720 of profit a hectare. And someone said to me the other day, how do we make pasture management, sexy again? And I said, well, it's certainly not getting Mark and me up here because we're well and truly past that. But with those sort of numbers, I mean, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you want to put the time and effort into managing your pastures? I mean, for Hugh and Anna, that $720, they're doing another 2.6 tonne of dry matter of pasture eaten. That's worth, nearly $2,000 a hectare for them. So for this farm, it's worth sort of $350,000, $400,000 from this extra pasture and crop that's eaten on the farm. So, everyone we've talked about other things, but that is that real sort of key part of the system. So when we sort of look at, at supplements, and I had a look at other farms that were feeding a similar amount of supplements, so 4.4 tonnes of dry matter per hectare. And what I saw in the dairy base is that the profit per hectare for those farms, there was a $10,000 difference. So I actually found those dots here. One of them was this one down here, so I'm not sure who this poor farmer is down here.
Is he here
but
today?
yeah, I was going to say. And I actually think, that's one of the real benefits of dairy base is you can have a look at these systems and why is it that they're there. It doesn't mean, they're not, really interesting to see why. But this farmer here was feeding the same amount of supplement as Hugh and Anna, and also this farmer up here. So you've got, all feeding supplement. So it's not the amount of supplement per se that is important. It's how it's been managed in that system. So there's sort of two key drivers for that profitable use of supplement. We've got the cost of the supplement, and then actually more importantly, we've got that milk solids response that we get to that supplement. And some work done up in Northland at the farm systems up there, they showed that if you could increase your milk response to supplement, so on average, most farms, you get about an 80 gram response to the supplement in your system. If you can increase that by a quarter up to 100 grams, that was worth another $600 of profit per hectare. if you could drop the cost of the feed, so let's say we're getting palm kernel for $400, if we could pull that back to $300, that was still worth more, but only $300 of profit per hectare. So we spend a lot of time on trying to get, that supplement for a cheaper amount. We need to also spend more time, how do we get that good response to it in the paddock? So I think, sort of Hugh and Anna, you are importing about 1.2 tonne, I think, per hectare more than the benchmark, but your cost or your feeding costs are very similar. So we talked about a little bit inside, but if you just sort of want to touch on, how you source that feed, how do you decide what to feed, and how are you sort of keeping that cost low?
Yeah. Okay. Yep. So basically, when we're sourcing the feed, you obviously just you're at the mercy of the market there a little bit. You're always trying to find the cheapest blend as possible, but you're also trying to make something that's going to be utilised the most. So, depending on time of year, as say we do bring a bit of silage and maize off the runoff, and that's used, basically they're good bulk feed. So when you're light on grass, that's the best time to use those. And then the rest of the time for the in-shed feeding, we're just looking at something that's going to be the cream on top of what the cow already needs and what can eat. Because the cow can only ever eat so much grass anyway. So if you can fit a little bit more in, that's going to utilise a bit higher, make a bit more milk out of her, then that's ideal. That's what we're trying to achieve there. So at the same time, we're not going for big fancy blends. We are adding a little bit of starch or energy in the spring, and then throughout the summer, a little bit of something that's got a pellet in there to help with flow more so than anything. But I think there's always enough protein in our grass up here. So we're usually pretty summer safe that we don't chase that too much. Don't want to pay too much per tonne because I'd rather feed more of it and a bit cheaper and go that way. Especially since we're stocked higher and we're trying to utilise it that way, So if that makes sense.
Yep. No, really good. And I think, when we look at the other side of it, like I said before about that milk solids response, if you look at the numbers, Hugh and Anna were feeding a similar amount per cow, so I think just over 1 tonne per cow, but their cows are producing another 100 kilos of milk solids per cow. So sort of do the maths in it, they're getting about a 90 to 100 gram response to that extra supplement in their system. So
a big part of it will be the higher stocking rate, I think.
Absolutely, and that's what we're sort of just going to touch a little bit on now. So we've heard, I think there was a question inside about about substitution, and I quite like using this diagram over here on the far side. Same again, it's in your handout if you want to go through it. And I think, like we said before, it's not the amount of feed that we're feeding that makes a difference. Like I said, those 3 farms all feeding the same amount, incredibly different profit. It's how those supplements are used in the system. And so if we think about it here at the start, we've got the supplement that we offer to the cows. So does all that supplement go down the cow's throat? Is anyone still awake out there? Does all the supplement that we offer to our cows go down their throat? No, thank you. So, that comes about, with utilisation. And Hugh, I don't know if you sort of want to touch on, you have your PKE in shed.
Yep.
And if you're feeding out in the paddock, you're really conscious about the maize silage going along the fence line.
Yep.
And sort of why is that?
Yep, just trying to obviously maximise utilisation. I know feeding in the paddocks it is what it is. It's without going and spending a fortune on infrastructure, I'd rather buy land and infrastructure. So, I'm just not going to go down that path. So we just got to, it is what it is with the feeding out the silage and maize. It still seems to work, obviously, so that's why we still do it. So, and it's good bulk feed, so yeah, got to keep it up.
Yep, and I think it's just being aware of that. So, we know that we offer that supplement. We know that some will be wasted. If we were going to go and feed maize silage out in a paddock and it's bucketing down with rain and the cows are going to walk all over it, we might only be eating about 50% of what we've fed out. In shed, we still work on about a 90% because there's still some that gets left, it gets snorted on, it blows away. But what you can see here is that, some of that is lost feed. What we want to end up here is with the most milk solids that we can from that amount of feed that we put in the system. So the next step is that the cows have eaten that supplement. Now, what always happens, it's almost like it's sort of the dirty word of nutrition and feeding, and that is substitution. And I think people get substitution mixed up with wastage. So what happens when we feed supplements to grazing cows, they will always leave pasture behind that they would have eaten if they hadn't had those supplements. So I asked Hugh today, I said, Hugh, over in the paddock there, the cows are, how much sort of feed have they had today? And I think Hugh said they've had a couple of kilos of PKE and about sort of 5 kilos of silage. So it looks like they're doing a pretty good job on the residuals over there. If we put those cows in that paddock without feeding that supplement, what would happen to those residuals? I'm seeing a few people point down. They would go down. Those cows would deck that paddock. So 7 kilos that they haven't had, they would deck that paddock. Those supplements have come in. What's going to happen to those residuals?
Maintain.
Yep, they're coming up. So we're targeting. That is substitution. It's how we manage it that means whether we're going to waste feed, so we're going to waste pasture, or we're actually managing it in the system to hit the pasture targets that we want to. So we want to hit that residual. We know that's really important for quality in our daughter tillers. We want to be on the right round length, because that's where we're going to get the pasture quality and yield going forward, and we want to hit the right covers. So I think, actually what you see in systems where people are managing the supplements well in their system is they're using the supplements to meet their pasture targets. They're not just chasing production. And also, what we sometimes see is if you put those supplements in, let's say those cows got 15 kilos of supplement, then that residual will rise. And what you do if you don't hit that residual, you've got that lovely 12 ME pasture leaf blowing in the wind. We know then you'll get more stem and stalk. The next time around, you reduce the quality of the feed, and then you're reducing, the feed ahead of you and the quality of the feed ahead of you. So the supplements per se are not the biggest part of the equation. It's how they're managed in the system, and I think that's what Hugh and Anna. That's why they're getting that really good response. So they've eaten extra from it. They've spared some pasture or grown some more. It comes down to their deferred milk solids, so they're not getting the milk solids from that pasture today and hitting those pasture targets, but it's going ahead. And some work here, Kevin McDonald's out there, and it's some work that he did when paddocks were managed, so residuals were managed differently through the spring. So one left a higher residual, one was managed to target residuals. When we went back into those paddocks in summer, the paddocks that have been managed to that target residual were 1 ME higher than those other paddocks. So, same again, you get things right in spring, you're setting yourself up, going forward into that summer period. So, and I think, keeping that system simple as well. So, low-cost supplements as best we can, managed well in the system, using that substitution in a positive manner, not wasting any feed, is why these guys are getting that high response. So just conscious, Mark's just given me the time. Happy to take sort of any questions out there about that. Or we can just keep talking up here.
Done well, Jane. Done a great job.
We're getting a lot of questions come through about the breeds. So you've obviously got your Friesian and your Jerseys. What difference are you seeing in their performance, and why not crossing them?
This is on? Yep. So basically, any given time we can look on the Fonterra app and we see about a 1% difference in milk solids difference between the two herds. So there's always usually a 1% higher in fat content with the Jerseys here. Why don't we cross them?
Bit of fun, eh? Competition.
Yep. Bit of that, and basically, as we kind of said before, it's only a small part of our business, but the calf market is, sell the Frisian bulls. We rear the Jersey bulls for sale for service bulls as part of what we can do on a dry stock with that extra land there, and just for the beef purposes too. Angus is over the Jerseys and for Herefords over the Frisians, so kind of ticks a few of those boxes there. And yeah, I know the first cross is always a great cross to have, but no, we're just trying to keep it to straight breeds and just trying to get them uniform in size is what we're trying to aim for, and just trying to do well in excess of 100 kilos. 100% live weight production is the goal. Because nothing worse than having big, massive cows here on these hills and just not doing the goods. So, yeah.
I think just while we're waiting for another question, please just call out, hands up, and that, as they say, there is no such thing as a dumb question. It's just the one that you haven't asked. So I did just want to sort of touch a little bit on the stocking rate, because I think that is what plays a key role in Hugh and Anna's system and being able to, to hit those residuals. It's that grazing density, and if we have a look at the feed demand, pasture supply curve, you can see that a lot of time over that season, they are in a feed deficit. So, apart from a small part through spring, and that is that high stocking rate that's been set to create that. And that means then that, they're able to stay on top of that pasture quality. They're able to hit those residuals with that high stocking rate. And that's why they're getting that good response to supplements in their system. It also means they have to have a really good management plan, though. So, you run that sort of system. You have a tough season. There's not a lot of buffer, so you've got to be good at pulling the levers. Do we need to dry cows off? Do we need to cull some animals? You are exposed a little bit to the externalities of feed price and that.
Hi. How does your pasture eating per hectare look over time? Has it been growing? Has it been stable?
Well, as you can see on that graph there, it's actually come down a bit in the last couple of years. But
compare it to the benchmark, though.
To the benchmark, yep. It's no, it's basically it was a bit higher before that as well, around more so it has come down in the last couple of years, and I am putting it down to a couple of tough summers there, and just basically.
These two businesses all the data gets recorded as well, and you mentioned some of the palm kernel in there went to young stock. So
yes.
The numbers are what they are from the information we get. That's not a perfect science, but continuing, improving the reporting as well is another aspect for you guys, eh?
Yep. Yeah, so part of that board and feed. Oh, is that on this one? Don't think it is. A little bit of board and feed that isn't all going into the cows for milk. Oh, it is important. Yeah, that one there. Yep, there is a bit of that going to young stock. Especially since last year, we had that real tough pinch in March, April. We put in a couple of unit loads of palm kernel, and we bought bales in even to keep the dry stock going. So there is a little bit of that that's not actually adjusted properly in this.
And because it's a back calculation, by default, the pasture and crop harvested would be higher.
Yep. Okay.
Jane, the last couple of field days we've had, there's been presentation on marginal milk. Would you like to just briefly cover that, just with the pitfalls of how it can go astray?
Yep, definitely. So, and I think, marginal milk is really important, and it's a really important thing to look at in your business. What marginal milk is, it's basically saying what is the cost of, if you're producing more milk in the system, what has been the cost of achieving it? So that may have come through more supplement, it may have come through changes to stocking rate, whatever you've done in the system to achieve that extra milk. And what we often see is that we'll just look at average costs. So we may have bought, a little bit more feed in, we've produced a little bit more milk, and our average cost will look fine, $10 payout, average cost of that milk, it's $8. We're doing really, really well. What we've seen, and we've seen it across a lot of farms, we've gone out to some farms and looked at their numbers, and what you can see is that extra milk that has been produced, that year or off that farm from that extra amount of supplement is often more, it costs more than what the return is on it. So really, really important to look at that. I haven't sort of had a real chance to dig into Hugh's and Anna's and have a look at that marginal milk sort of over time or compared to the benchmark, but really important thing to do because it can get hidden in that average cost. So, you average sort of over the whole system and you think, yeah, we're doing great. If you can pull out that extra milk that's been made from changes to your system, a bit of extra feed, and extra stocking rate, you'll see that sometimes you would have been better off not to have made it. And did some work. There's about 3 years of farm system work up in NAF, up in Northland, and it showed exactly that. So one of the systems that we looked at, we brought in some more expensive feed. We brought in more of that feed. Yep, we did make a little bit more milk. I think we had made about 100 kilos of milk solids more in that farmlet, but the cost of the system went up by over $1,000. So that extra milk, and it was in an $8 payout year, was costing $10 for every kilo of milk solids we made. Just that extra milk. So it's not saying the system's not profitable, but it would have been more profitable if we hadn't have put that extra feed in just to make that little bit of milk. So a real important concept, and I think something, really worthwhile doing on your farm, particularly if you're sort of at that point where you're bringing in a lot of feed. Can you pull it back and actually, and be more profitable? How far do you go there?
Jane, I think the other one too is that every dollar spent on feed is another 50 or 60 cents of cost.
Yep. So really good. Arthur, you should be up here. Come on. So yeah, and that's the same again, and it comes through in the dairy base. So across nationally, for every dollar that's spent on supplement in the system, the total cost of that system will go up by between $1.50 and up to $2. So, and we've seen that. We see that from the dairy-based data. So we see it from what's happening on farm, and we see it in our research studies as well. So if you think about it, it's it's things like what we call fixed costs actually aren't that fixed. So, we've got supplements coming in, we're making more milk, we've got higher electricity costs. We're bringing supplements in, we're feeding out in the paddock, we've got repairs and maintenance, we've got fuel. So I think, interesting, Hugh, when you do your budget, and same again, it's not saying that supplements are not profitable, it's saying be realistic about the cost of them in your system. So when you're doing that budget and you're saying, yep, this is what the milk price is, this is what the cost of my supplements is, you might be getting that palm kernel for $400. It's actually going to cost your system $600 to $700, feeding it out. So just important to do when you're doing that feed budget and you're thinking about what is going to be the return on this on the supplement.
Thank you, Jane. I'll just cut. I need to get on. Because Olin's waiting in the wings over here. So we're just going to wrap that part up, and I get the pleasure of just making a couple of key points before I invite Olin up. But I just think, again, just to reinforce from that session, that focus on the fundamentals, the focus on over here, we've got setting targets for pasture cover, but also then setting those key targets for body condition score and trying your very best to meet those. And I think the results show they must be. Also, how something impacted their high repro performance and how quickly they bounced back. I made the point to them, some people in the 70s or high 60s have been trying to get to where they are. They lost it and gained it back in 3 years just by sticking to their knitting and doing what they were always good at. And just, I think those things around feed costs, just reiterating, a lot of people would go out and spend a lot of money, and I sort of wrote down, would rather buy more of something for the same price than invest in a higher blend, because that's what you've found works for your system. So thank you very much, and thanks to Jane and to the questions. So just a quick brief round of applause, and then I'm going to invite, don't leave,